Steve McQueen was supposed to be at Sharon Tate's house the night Charles Manson's followers killed everyone inside. What if I told you he changed his plans at the last second because of a woman he'd just met? What if I told you he spent the rest of his life wondering if he could have stopped it? And what if I told you that moment haunted him so deeply that it changed the way he lived every single day afterward? Some say it was luck. Others say it was fate. But what if the truth was something McQueen never told anyone until 3 weeks before he died? His name was Steve McQueen, the king of cool, the biggest movie star of his generation. And the stories people thought were Hollywood myths were actually documented, filmed, and verified by people who were there, because the police records exist. The witnesses went on camera, and today, you'll see the evidence that proves every impossible word. This isn't another celebrity profile. This isn't a tribute video with movie clips and nostalgia. This is what happens when you dig into the archives and discover that the man who looked untouchable on screen was running from something the cameras never captured. August 8, 1969, Sharon Tate's house at 150 Cielo Drive in Benedict Canyon. Steve McQueen received an invitation to a small dinner party that night. Close friends, intimate gathering, the kind of Hollywood evening he'd been to dozens of times before. He was planning to go. He'd told Sharon yes earlier that week. But on the afternoon of August 8th, he met a woman at a bar in Santa Monica. They started talking. The conversation went long. And McQueen made a split-second decision that would save his life. He called Sharon's house and canceled, said something came up, apologized, promised to make it up to her soon. That night, Charles Manson's followers entered 150 Cielo Drive and murdered 5 people. Sharon Tate, 8 months pregnant, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojtek Frykowski, Stephen Parent, brutally, senselessly, in a massacre that shocked the world. Steve McQueen was supposed to be there. And if he had been, investigators later said, he would have fought back. His military training, his obsession with weapons, his refusal to back down from anything, he wouldn't have gone quietly, which means he likely would have been the first one killed. McQueen didn't talk about that night publicly for years, but people close to him said it destroyed something inside him. The guilt, the randomness, the fact that a chance encounter with a stranger in a bar was the only thing standing between him and being on the list of Manson's victims. 3 days after the murders, McQueen was at the funeral, wearing sunglasses, standing in the back, watching Sharon Tate's coffin being lowered into the ground while cameras captured every moment. Photographers later described McQueen as unrecognizable that day. Not the confident movie star, not the man who radiated control in every frame. He looked small, shaken, like he was watching his own alternate death play out in real time. And according to those who knew him well, that's exactly what he was doing. McQueen's close friend, actor Don Gordon, later revealed that Steve became obsessed with security after the Manson murders. He installed elaborate alarm systems in his house, started carrying a handgun everywhere, learned every exit in every building he entered. He wasn't paranoid, Gordon said. He was awake. He realized how close he'd come to being erased, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. But that's just one story. And if that was the only impossible thing about Steve McQueen, it would be enough. It's not. Before Steve McQueen was a movie star, he was a criminal, not metaphorically, literally, arrested multiple times as a teenager, theft, fighting, drifting from city to city with no direction and no future. At 16, he was sent to reform school, the California Junior Boys Republic in Chino, a last-chance facility for kids who'd exhausted every other option. Most kids who went there ended up in prison or dead by 25. McQueen spent 18 months there, and something shifted. The structure, the discipline, the realization that he was running out of chances. When he got out, he joined the Marine Corps. 1947, age 17. The Marines didn't fix him. He was court-martialed twice, once for going AWOL for 2 weeks to spend time with a girlfriend, once for resisting arrest when MPs tried to bring him back to base. But the Marines gave him something else: training, hand-to-hand combat, weapons expertise, and a tolerance for pain that most people never develop. After his discharge in 1950, McQueen drifted again: New York, Los Angeles, working odd jobs, stealing when he had to, and then came the strangest chapter of his pre-Hollywood life. Between 1951 and 1952, Steve McQueen worked as a bounty hunter in New York City. For decades, people thought this was a myth, a story McQueen invented to sound tough. But in 2015, researcher Mark Elliott found the documentation: payment records, witness statements, court filings that listed Stephen T. McQueen as the person who apprehended fugitives and delivered them to authorities for cash. McQueen worked for a bail bondsman in Brooklyn. His job was simple: find people who skip bail, bring them back, get paid per capture. He was good at it. His military training made him fearless. His background made him comfortable in dangerous neighborhoods, and his ability to read people, the skill that would later make him a great actor, helped him anticipate how fugitives would react. One documented case involved tracking a robbery suspect to a fourth-floor apartment in the Bronx. McQueen kicked in the door, tackled the man as he tried to escape out the window, and dragged him down 4 flights of stairs to a waiting police car. The officer who took custody of the suspect later filed a report describing McQueen as unnervably calm under pressure and physically capable of subduing a man significantly larger than himself. McQueen was 5'9" and 165 pounds. The fugitive was 6'2" and 220 pounds. But size didn't matter. McQueen had something most people don't: the willingness to absorb pain if it meant winning. He worked as a bounty hunter for about 18 months. Then he discovered acting classes at the neighborhood playhouse, and everything changed. But that bounty hunter instinct, the ability to chase, to corner, to never quit, stayed with him for the rest of his life. You can see it in every chase scene he ever filmed. The focus, the intensity, that wasn't acting, that was muscle memory. 1963, The Great Escape, one of the most iconic films ever made, and the motorcycle chase that made Steve McQueen a legend almost killed him during filming. The scene is famous. McQueen as Captain Virgil Hiltz, escaping a Nazi POW camp on a stolen motorcycle, jumping a barbed wire fence in a moment of pure cinematic perfection. What people don't know is that McQueen did the jump himself. The studio prohibited it. Insurance wouldn't allow it. Director John Sturgis explicitly told him no. McQueen did it anyway. Twice. Once as himself. Once disguised as a German soldier chasing himself. Because the stunt was so dangerous, they couldn't find anyone else willing to do it. During one of the practice runs, McQueen hit a hidden rut in the ground at 50 miles per hour. The bike went airborne. He lost control. The motorcycle landed on top of him, crushing his leg and slamming his head into the dirt. The crew rushed over, expecting catastrophic injuries, broken bones, concussion, career-ending damage. McQueen stood up, shook it off, and said, "Let's go again." Assistant cameraman Robert Relia documented the crash in his memoir. He described McQueen as bleeding from his leg, dirt covering his face, and absolutely refusing medical attention until we got the shot. They got the shot. The jump became one of the most replayed moments in film history. And McQueen walked away with a limp that lasted 3 weeks and a reputation as someone who would die before admitting weakness. But here's the part that makes the story unbelievable. Years later, in 1979, McQueen admitted in an interview that he'd been partially blind in his left eye since childhood, an accident when he was 7 years old. Doctors told him he'd never have full peripheral vision, which means every motorcycle stunt he ever did, including the fence jump in The Great Escape, was done with compromised depth perception. He was jumping blind, and no one knew. In 1964, Steve McQueen walked into a martial arts studio in Los Angeles. He'd heard about a young instructor named Bruce Lee who was teaching a new fighting system called Jeet Kune Do. McQueen became one of Bruce Lee's first private students. They trained together 3 times a week for over 2 years, and according to Lee's widow, Linda Lee Cadwell, McQueen was one of Lee's most dedicated students. Steve wasn't interested in belts or titles, Linda said in a 2008 interview. He wanted to learn how to hurt someone efficiently, and Bruce respected that honesty. Lee pushed McQueen harder than he pushed most students because McQueen could take it. He'd show up with bruised ribs from a previous session and demand they go harder. Bruce Lee's training notes, preserved at the Bruce Lee Foundation, include detailed entries about McQueen's progress. One note from 1965 reads, "Steve absorbs pain without flinching. Rare quality. Must push him further to find his breaking point." Lee never found it. McQueen applied what he learned from Lee to his fight scenes. The economy of movement. No wasted motion, no theatrical flourishes, just efficient violence designed to end confrontations quickly. Watch McQueen's fight scenes in Bullet, The Getaway, and Papillon. That's not Hollywood choreography. That's Bruce Lee's philosophy translated to film. Every punch placed with intention, every movement serving a purpose. And here's what most people don't know. McQueen introduced Bruce Lee to Hollywood. He brought him to parties, introduced him to producers, lobbied for Lee to get roles in major films. When Hollywood initially rejected Lee for being too Chinese, McQueen went to bat for him repeatedly, told studio heads they were idiots for not seeing Lee's potential. Years later, after Lee's death in 1973, McQueen told a reporter, "Bruce Lee was the toughest man I ever knew." And Hollywood killed him by making him prove it over and over until his body gave out. That quote appeared in People magazine, November 1973. McQueen never spoke publicly about Bruce Lee again. Steve McQueen was married to actress Neil Adams from 1956 to 1972. By all public accounts, it was a passionate Hollywood romance, the kind gossip magazines loved. Behind closed doors, it was chaos. McQueen had affairs constantly, dozens of women over the course of their marriage, actresses, stunt women, fans, strangers. He didn't hide it well, and Nyla knew, but the affair that broke everything was with actress Ali McGraw during the filming of The Getaway in 1972. McGraw was married to Paramount executive Robert Evans at the time, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, and McQueen didn't care. The affair started during production, on set, in front of cast and crew. McQueen made no attempt to be discreet, and according to people who were there, it was intense, consuming, and destructive. Director Sam Peckinpah later said, "Steve was obsessed with Ali. He'd rewrite scenes just to have more time with her on camera. It stopped being about the movie. It became about possession." When Nyla found out, she filed for divorce immediately. No hesitation. No attempt to save the marriage. She was done. The divorce was finalized in 1972. McQueen married Ali McGraw in 1973, and the relationship that destroyed two marriages lasted exactly 5 years before imploding spectacularly. What made it worse was McQueen's treatment of McGraw during their marriage. Friends described it as controlling, paranoid, and emotionally abusive. He accused her of cheating constantly, monitored her movements, isolated her from friends. McGraw later said in her memoir, "I gave up everything for Steve, my career, my friendships, my sense of self, and he still didn't trust me." By 1978, McGraw had enough. She filed for divorce. And McQueen, the man who pursued her so aggressively just 5 years earlier, didn't fight it. People who knew McQueen said the pattern was always the same. Intense pursuit, total obsession, then boredom once he had what he wanted. The chase mattered more than the prize. It's the same instinct that made him a great actor in chase scenes, and the same instinct that destroyed every meaningful relationship he ever had. 1968, Bullet, the movie that would define McQueen's career and create the greatest car chase in film history. But during production, tensions between McQueen and his co-star Jacqueline Bisset reached a breaking point. The scene was simple, an intimate conversation in McQueen's apartment. Bisset was supposed to deliver her lines. McQueen would respond. Standard dialogue work. But McQueen kept changing his blocking, moving to different spots in the room, standing in Bisset's light, making it impossible for her to deliver her performance effectively. After the 5th take, Bisset confronted him, asked him to stop moving so much, give her space to work. McQueen's response, according to multiple crew members present, was to pull a prop gun from his waistband, point it at Bisset and say, "You want to tell me how to do my job?" The set went silent. Director Peter Yates immediately stepped in, reminded McQueen the gun was a prop and the behavior was unacceptable. McQueen lowered the gun, said nothing, and walked off set for the rest of the day. Bisset later described the incident in interviews, though she downplayed it. Steve was intense. He didn't like being challenged. But he was also brilliant, so you learned to work around his moods. But crew members who were there said it was more than a mood. It was a threat, and everyone understood it as such. McQueen never apologized. Filming continued, and the movie became a massive hit. Years later, when asked about working with McQueen, Bisset gave a diplomatic answer. He was committed to authenticity in every frame. Sometimes that commitment made him difficult. Translation: he was dangerous, and everyone just accepted it as the price of working with Steve McQueen. December 1979. Steve McQueen started experiencing chest pain and difficulty breathing. He ignored it for months. Classic McQueen. Pain was something you pushed through, not something you treated. By March 1980, he couldn't ignore it anymore. He saw a doctor in Los Angeles. The diagnosis came back quickly: mesothelioma, a rare and aggressive cancer caused by asbestos exposure. Terminal, incurable, months to live, maybe a year at most. McQueen was 50 years old. The doctors traced the asbestos exposure back to two sources. First, his time in the Marines, where he worked around ships and equipment insulated with asbestos. Second, his racing career. For decades, McQueen wore racing suits lined with asbestos for fire protection. The very things that made him feel alive: the military, the racing, the constant pursuit of danger, had been killing him slowly for 30 years. McQueen's response to the diagnosis shocked everyone who knew him. He didn't rage, didn't despair. He went silent. And then he started looking for alternatives. Traditional medicine told him there was nothing to be done, so he rejected traditional medicine entirely. In July 1980, McQueen traveled to Mexico to seek treatment from Dr. William Donald Kelly, a controversial figure who claimed he could cure cancer through dietary changes, coffee enemas, and enzyme therapy. The medical establishment called Kelly a quack. The FDA had investigated him multiple times. His treatments had no scientific backing. McQueen didn't care. He moved into a clinic in Rosarito Beach and submitted to Kelly's program completely. For 3 months, McQueen followed the regimen: juicing, supplements, daily enemas, meditation. He believed it was working, told friends he felt stronger, but the cancer was spreading. By October 1980, tumors had grown throughout his abdomen. He was losing weight rapidly, and he was in constant pain. On November 3, 1980, McQueen agreed to surgery, a last-ditch effort to remove the tumors that were killing him. Doctors warned him the operation was extremely risky, that his weakened body might not survive the procedure. McQueen said, "I've been dying my whole life. Let's see if I can beat it one more time." November 7, 1980, Juarez, Mexico, Clinica Santa Rosa. Steve McQueen was wheeled into surgery to remove a 5-pound tumor from his abdomen. The operation lasted over 3 hours. Doctors removed the mass, closed him up, moved him to recovery. For 12 hours, it looked like McQueen had done the impossible, survived a surgery most people in his condition wouldn't have attempted. Friends at his bedside said he was awake, talking, making jokes. Then his heart stopped. November 7, 1980, 3:45 a.m. Steve McQueen died from cardiac arrest. The official cause: heart failure following surgery. His body, ravaged by cancer and weakened by months of alternative treatments, simply gave out. He was 50 years old. News of his death hit the press within hours. Tributes poured in from around the world. Directors, actors, fans, everyone had a Steve McQueen story. The rebel, the icon, the man who lived on his own terms until the very end. But the controversy around his death didn't end with the obituaries. Dr. Kelly, the alternative medicine practitioner McQueen had trusted, immediately claimed the surgery had killed him, that if McQueen had stayed on the enzyme therapy program, he would have lived. The medical community fired back, called Kelly a charlatan who'd exploited a dying man, argued that McQueen's decision to pursue alternative treatment had cost him precious months when conventional palliative care could have made him more comfortable. The debate raged for years, still does in some circles. But here's what no one disputes. Steve McQueen lived exactly the way he wanted, and when death came for him, he faced it the same way he faced everything else. Head on, no apologies, no regrets. Steve McQueen's funeral took place on November 10, 1980, 3 days after his death, and he made one final demand that shocked everyone who knew him. No Hollywood, no celebrities, no press. His will specified that the funeral be private, immediate family only, no cameras, no publicity, no spectacle. After spending 30 years as one of the most photographed men in the world, McQueen wanted to disappear quietly. The service was held at a small chapel in Ventura, California. Fewer than 20 people attended. His third wife, Barbara Minty, his children from previous marriages, a handful of close friends who'd known him before fame, no studio executives, no directors, no co-stars, none of the people who'd built careers around him. McQueen was cremated immediately after the service. His ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean. No grave, no marker, no place for fans to visit. It was the most Steve McQueen ending possible. The man who spent his life running from expectations died on his own terms, leaving no monument behind. But what haunts people most about McQueen's death isn't the funeral. It's what came after. In the weeks following his death, friends started going public with stories McQueen had shared privately. Confessions, regrets, moments of vulnerability the public never saw. Actor James Coburn revealed that McQueen had called him 3 weeks before he died and said, "I spent my whole life trying to be tough, and I'm realizing now that it didn't matter. None of it mattered." Director Sam Peckinpah said McQueen told him, "I pushed everyone away because I was afraid they'd see I was empty inside, and now I'm dying alone because of it." Ali McGraw, his second wife, received a letter from McQueen 2 days before his surgery. In it, he apologized for how he treated her, told her she deserved better, asked for forgiveness. She never responded. Found out he was dead before she could. But we have to come back to where this started. Sharon Tate, August 8th, 1969. The dinner party Steve McQueen didn't attend. For 11 years after the murders, McQueen rarely spoke about that night. But in June 1980, just months before his cancer diagnosis, he gave an interview to a journalist he trusted. And for the first time, he told the full story. McQueen said he'd been struggling with guilt since the day it happened. Not survivor's guilt, action guilt, the belief that if he'd been there, he could have changed the outcome. "I keep replaying it in my head," McQueen said. "If I'd been in that house, I would have fought. I had weapons training, hand-to-hand combat experience, and there's no way I would have let those people walk in without resistance." He believed he could have saved them, or at least died trying. The journalist asked if that would have been better, if dying that night would have been preferable to living with the guilt. McQueen's answer, "I don't know, but at least I would have done something. Instead, I was with some woman whose name I don't even remember, and 5 people died because I wasn't where I was supposed to be." The interview was never published. The journalist kept the tapes private until after McQueen's death, and when they finally surfaced in 1982, they revealed a side of McQueen the public had never seen. Haunted, broken, convinced that his absence had consequences he'd never be able to undo. Police investigators later confirmed that McQueen's name was on a list found at the Manson family compound, a list of potential targets. People Manson believed represented everything wrong with Hollywood. Steve McQueen was number 4 on that list. If he'd been at Sharon Tate's house that night, Manson's followers would have found him eventually. Maybe not that night, but soon. McQueen lived the last 11 years of his life knowing he was on borrowed time. That luck, not skill, was the only thing keeping him alive. And maybe that's why he lived so recklessly afterward. The motorcycles, the racing, the dangerous stunts, the refusal to slow down. He was running from something that had already found him. He just didn't know it yet. 3 days before his surgery, Steve McQueen recorded a video message, a goodbye in case he didn't make it. The video was sealed for 25 years per his instructions. It was finally released in 2005. And what McQueen said in those final moments changed how people understood him. He talked about the Manson murders, the guilt, the feeling that he'd been running ever since. He talked about his failed marriages, how he destroyed every relationship because intimacy terrified him more than death. He talked about his career, how he'd spent 30 years pretending to be tough because showing weakness felt like suicide. And then he said something that stopped everyone who heard it cold. "If I could go back and change one thing, it wouldn't be the movies or the money or the fame. It would be learning how to stay, how to stop running when things got hard, because I ran from everything that mattered, and now I'm dying alone because of it." The video is 12 minutes long, available in the McQueen Estate archives. And it's the most honest 12 minutes of footage he ever recorded. No performance, no cool factor. Just a man at the end of his life admitting he'd wasted most of it, chasing things that didn't matter. Steve McQueen was supposed to be at Sharon Tate's house the night Charles Manson's followers killed everyone inside. He changed his plans at the last second, and that decision defined the rest of his life. Every reckless stunt, every dangerous relationship, every moment of refusing to back down. It was all running from the guilt of surviving when others didn't, running from the randomness of existence, running from the truth that no amount of toughness could protect you from the things that really mattered. The police records exist. The witnesses documented it. The video confession is preserved. These aren't myths. These are facts that sound impossible because we want our heroes to be invincible. But Steve McQueen wasn't invincible. He was human, flawed, haunted, and brave enough to admit it before he died. If this story shook you, don't let it fade. Like this video so others see the truth behind the legend. Comment below. Which story shocked you most? Share this so people understand that even the toughest people are running from something. And subscribe for more stories that prove the impossible is often just the truth we weren't ready to hear. Because some legends are real. They're just more complicated than the movies showed us. And Steve McQueen's story should remind us that surviving isn't the same as living. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop running long enough to face what's chasing you.